If you had one shot or one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted in one moment, would you capture it or just let it slip? Yo. His palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. There's vomit on his sweater already. Mom's spaghetti, he's nervous, but on the surface he looks calm and ready to drop bombs. But he keeps on forgetting what he wrote down. The whole crowd goes so loud, he opens his mouth, but the words won't come out. He's choking how? Everybody's choking now. The clock's run out, time's up, over, loud. Snap back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity. Oh, there goes gravity. Choke. He's so mad, but he won't give up. Daddies, he know he won't have it. He knows his whole back to these ropes. It don't matter, he's dope. He knows that, but he's broke. He's so stacked that he knows when he goes back to this mobile home, that's when it's back to the lab again, yo. This old rhapsody better go back to this moment and hope it don't pass him.
Listen, we can talk about the flag, but let's talk about Wait.
And a very good morning, everybody. Welcome to Trending in the AM right here on DSM Media. We're live, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. You know the drill. Retweet, share, thumbs up, subscribe, and we'll get right underway here as we have a jam-packed show. I'm Phil Stifle, your host at Bearded Knowledge on Twitter. Joining me today, the Overreaction Monday crew is here today, Tuesday. They're going to be here tomorrow, Wednesday. We're going to get jam-packed with the whole entire crew this week. We got Mark Moscatelli at Mark with a C, and we got Jason Voorhees at Mustang3651. Good morning, gentlemen, and great to see you this morning.
What's going on?
Good morning, Phil.
Good morning, guys. You got to come in with a little bit more energy when I say good morning, guys. I want to see you guys doing cartwheels when I say that. When am I going to see Mark Moscatelli do a cartwheel live on the air?
You're not.
This is
my body will not allow me to do any type of physical activity like that. It's I'm beyond that.
Your body, your wife won't let you do it either.
That too.
This is the picture of what it looks like of somebody that had to go back to work yesterday for the first day after a vacation. You're not going to be happy.
Yeah, you're not going to be energetic whatsoever. All right, so jam-packed episode today, like I said. We're going to start with Phillies. Walk-off fashion, dramatic win, last night. Team DSM was in the house. We're going to talk that a little bit. Going to mention, we're going to pick up, we wanted to talk about it yesterday, we didn't get it, to the Phillies' newest fan, and that's Ocho Cinco. And then I want to start the conversation. It might be a 2-day conversation, honestly, because it's such a long conversation to have. I ran a poll question on Twitter last week about ESPN 30 for 30s and what Philly sports topic of the past 20 years you would love to see a documentary done on it where you get all the information and all your questions are answered. So we're going to talk about that because I think there's a lot of interesting topics of our past 20-some years that we would love some more information on. So let's get started. Phillies, walk-off, dramatic fashion last night, 3-2. Rhys Hoskins, walk-off double. Aaron Nola pitched another gem of a game. Jason, I know you want to start off by apologizing. So we're going to dive right into it. Jason, who would you like to apologize to?
I think Aaron Nola deserves an apology from everybody because I think everybody's been overreacting about Aaron Nola and the fact that, he's maybe not as good a pitcher as he is. And the more I think about it, I look back at his numbers. I think a lot of his numbers get skewed, and it just skews our opinions. But when it comes down to it, yes, he is more than capable of being an ace. It's just his consistency is the only real issue with Aaron Nola. It's not that he's not a good pitcher, and I think sometimes, it's funny because. Like me and Aaron had this conversation, and Aaron was like, dude, the Mets would take Aaron Nola in a second. Like, Mets fans would want him on their team, and, like, you guys are bashing him. And, like, I kind of was thinking about it, and he's, like, kind of right. Like, we act like Aaron Nola is, like, this guy that, like, we could just get rid of. But in reality, we have Zach Wheeler and we have Aaron Nola, and that's basically our two best pitchers, our best chance to making a run in any postseason, if we even make it. So, yeah, I wanted to apologize to Aaron Nola because I've been a little harsh on him.
Do you think that's a justified apology, Mark? You think it's okay to apologize?
Because
or are we jumping the gun and overreacting? And he's having a couple good starts, and the track record might say that Aaron Nola is just not as good as he's looked the last 2 or 3 outings.
No, I think for the majority in Aaron Nola's career, he's been a solid number two with flashes of number one. And if he could just get some consistent, regular run support, he'd be a perennial all-star. So I do think Jason's apology is okay and valid. I mean, he pitched great last night against the Marlins top pitcher. It was a nice little duel that was going on. But again, like the run support didn't come really until after they took him out of the game, after the Marlins took their starter out of the game, which again, he in the eighth inning, he got out of the jam with respect to getting a double play with the first, what was the bases loaded or first and second. They moved the runner to third. Why don't you just let him pitch to the last batter? If he did, they probably would have won the game. Instead, their reliever lost the game for him. It was pretty. It was pretty good for us, but a questionable move, if you ask me. I would have let him finish the eighth and have your closer come in for the ninth.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to mention, Sandy Alcantara. I mean, the guy's a pitching stud at this point, but he's somebody that's been for now several years been just completely dominating, the Phillies. And when I was going to the game and he was pitching, I knew it wasn't going to be an offensive explosion type game. So, you got to tip your hat to Sandy Alcantara. Is it Alcantara? Is that how you say it?
Alcantara.
You got to tip your hat to him because he's developed himself in Miami, which isn't an easy place to play. Developed himself into one of the top 3 or 4 pitchers in baseball right now. So, it was actually kind of fun to watch him pitch a little bit because the guy does it all with the way he pitches up there. So I do love him. But Mark, to your point, man, that double play he got JT to ground into in the 8th inning there. I mean, I want to bring it up in a second, but it just sucked the little energy that was in that stadium out, and you just felt that was it right there at that moment.
I mean, Miami frustrates me as a baseball fan because I guarantee Sandy Alcantara won't be a Miami Marlin much longer. Eventually, it's going to come time for contract, and he'll be a Yankee or a Red Sox or somebody else. And it's proven. You saw the era that they had previously where they had Stanton, Ozuna, Yelich, JT Realmuto. I mean, we could go down the whole line of guys that they had on one team, and they're all gone. And now that it's unfortunate, but it just seems like Miami acts like a small market team the way they do business, and it's just frustrating as a baseball fan because they really could have like greatness there if they were just patient and actually sign their players. Oh, I agree with Carter. I'll take him I definitely would take him, but I don't know, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting. I mean, he's always dominated the Phillies, but you talk about Miami.
Dominates everybody.
How many times have they won a World Series and completely sold off the team immediately after winning the World Series?
Twice.
Twice now. Yeah, exactly. You buy it, or you get to a World Series, you win a World Series, and dump them all. It's a really weird system that they got running down there in Miami for sure. So how about Rhys Hoskins coming through yesterday? You apologize to Aaron Nola, and Rhys Hoskins hasn't performed to Aaron Nola's level lately, but it seems like he might be slightly starting to turn the corner a little bit. We've had Bryson Stott start to turn the corner. A couple guys, Kyle Schwarber's starting to hit the ball a little bit better. Rhys Hoskins is starting to slowly creep up and get comfortable. And I was ready to bash. I forget who it was. Somebody on WIP or The Fanatic was tweeting out a week or two ago about how we're all really harsh on Rhys Hoskins. But if you look at the end of the season, his numbers, he always ends up with like an 850 OPS. He always gets to that. He always gets his average up to a certain point, a certain amount of home runs and all. And are we a little too quick to judge on some of these guys like Rhys Hoskins, who now, game-winning hit last night. I was listening to the post game in the car. That was his first ever walk-off hit in his career with the Phillies. I can't imagine how he's never had a walk-off, hit ever. So, are we too quick to judge on Rhys Hoskins as well?
I mean, I do think there's something to be said about that. He has got a career 851 OPS, and last year was the first year where he had a sub-8 OPS. I think we look at, once again, I think Cotter's on to something. I think we expect a player sometimes to be what they were in their best year. And I think that's a normal like mind trick that our mind plays with us. And I think you kind of go to like these guys like Aaron Nola. We look back to that year that he almost won the Cy Young, and we want that every single year. And that might be his ceiling, which that's fine. But it doesn't necessarily mean the guy's bad. And same thing with Rhys Hoskins. I guess my whole thing is, and I talk Rhys Hoskins all the time, but I just do it for a different reason. It's not necessarily that I don't think he's like a great player or a guy that's capable of putting up numbers, but it's more so his laissez attitude that I kind of dog him for. And that was kind of the norm for this Phillies team, but it seems like that, I don't want to say it's gone, but it's kind of like disappeared under the new manager. So I'm hoping that, maybe, just maybe, the manager was that big of an issue where changing the manager is going to fix, most of the ills. It's not going to fix every ill because we obviously know this Phillies team still has holes. Relief pitching is definitely one. But Rhys Hoskins, like I said, in my opinion, yeah, I'm hard on him. But I think if you do look at his overall body of work, he's pretty consistent at the end of the year. It's just he goes in these stretches. Like he's one of those, what we talked about in the beginning of the year, streaky hitters. Kyle Schwarber, same thing, streaky. Doesn't make them bad. It's just it's hard because sometimes they go in these lulls and you're like, as a fan, you get frustrated. Whereas other guys are more consistent over their long haul, over the body of work. They don't go in these 0 for 27s and then 13 for 30 with 8 home runs. There's some guys that just produce at a natural clip day in and day out. So it's kind of what we got to get used to because that's what this team's built on. A bunch of guys like that. Besides Harper.
So, Mark, something else I noticed last night, and, normally when you're at home in a tie game in the 9th inning and you're the home team, you put your closer in the 9th inning. Corey Knebel, who's a little banged up, it seems like he might have a sore shoulder. Or
he has a sore shoulder.
Something like that. Hey, guys, I mean, I know it wasn't a save situation, but Sir Anthony Dominguez was the guy that came in the 9th inning. Is that more of Rob Thompson just doing what should have been done this whole time?
Yeah, and I think they're using that as an excuse to put him in the position where they really want them, as not to hurt his feelings or not have anybody question him. Hey, you're paying this guy $10 million. Why isn't he closing? Well, the thing is he's struggling as a closer. He's not a closer. He hasn't been a regular closer for some time. What you're wishing him for versus his production are two different things. So Knebel, I don't have a problem with him setting up, but like we need somebody with some control and some dominance in the closer position. And Sir Anthony pitched very well. He had a strikeout. He pitched a full inning. I think it was a 1-2-3 inning. It was exactly what you're looking for in the 9th inning, and he got the win last night. So,
do you think pitching your first time as a closer this year in a situation where it's a tie game and not a save situation almost is like a nice way to ease into it? Because it's not like he was trying to save the game. It was already tied. So I was kind of thinking, was it also a good situation for Sir Anthony to come in the 9th inning because maybe a smidge less pressure for him in that spot versus coming into the 9th inning of a 1-run game that you must win?
I would say it was more pressure because, like, if you give up another run, like now you got to go work to get the tie again. I would say it was a little bit more pressure, and I think he did great. And I hope that they consider him to be in that role for the rest of the season. And I think to Phil, to what you said, I think they're going to ease him in to just try to keep the clubhouse in harmony, basically, without just ripping the Band-Aid off and saying, Corey, you're not going to be the closer anymore. So I think he's trying to be a little bit more diplomatic, I guess, Rob Thompson, with everybody to keep everybody happy in the clubhouse, because right now they are on a big time high, and they and you could see it by the way they play and the way they were reacting, the way they were celebrating last night on the walk-off hit. It was awesome. And special shout out to Matt Veering last night with that big, there you go, Kata. That single and having the balls to steal second base on a tie ball game in the ninth.
I don't know if that's the right thing to do or not, but it definitely worked out. I don't know if stealing the base when you got your top of your order in the ninth inning is the right thing. But you guys want to give him credit for that. I want to give him credit for the fact that he played second base the other day for the first time in his career. He played third base last night for the first time. This guy's an outfielder, and he's in there playing the infield. And let me tell you something. I saw some plays at third base last night. They weren't like a regular, everyday third baseman would make. But a guy that doesn't play third base, they weren't, cupcake plays. So, credit to him putting in some work in the last week or so. If you're a fringe baseball player, the best thing you do is make yourself available whenever your team needs you to do whatever it takes to get on the field. And Matt Vierling is doing whatever it takes to get on the field, learning new positions on the fly. And he's athletic and talented enough and smart enough to pick it up really quickly. Unlike someone like, let's see, Rhys Hoskins, left field. When we tried that left field experiment, he couldn't figure it out. He never got any better at it. At least Matt Vierling's figured it out pretty quickly there. So I like that.
Yeah, I don't know his history in the minors. Did he play at all, like infield positions at all?
I don't know. I mean, I could give it a quick search while you guys are talking, but I'm pretty sure when I heard he was taking second base balls, they had said he had never played second base before.
Interesting.
Let's see.
No, they must like his bat, and they must like him as a player. And, there's probably a glut in the outfield right now, and there will be in the future. So maybe he doesn't have room to play there, and just trying to find some other positions where he can play. And if he is a utility guy, bench guy, I mean, he will be super valuable for a team like this.
Well, that's just major league. So last year he played first base, left, center, and right, and that was it. So far he's played second, and that's in the majors. Let me see if I can find his minor league information here. But yeah, I mean, making yourself available is probably one of the most important things for fringe players. So that's really good. All right, here's
spot on. The best ability is availability.
Absolutely.
There's none better.
The minor league page.
You can't complain about having a guy that is going to help, the utility position. I mean, Camargo's been hurt. Camargo's kind of was playing that utility role. He's been out. So you got to have, resources to kind of fill the bench and have guys that can be, we talked about coming into this year when we had the lineup. We talked about the versatility, not only in the lineup, but in, guys being cycled in and out at DH. Well, now obviously the Bryce Harper injury kind of dampened that. So you've had to kind of go with Castellanos and Schwarber every day in the outfield, which we all know they're not the best defensive players.
So real quick, just so you know, I pulled it up. He has not played any in the Phillies. He got drafted in 2018. He has played outfield the entire time in the Phillies minor league system. He went to Notre Dame. He did play 25 games in 2018 at third base. So in 2018, he played third base and center field. And he pitched 5 times, too, that year.
Damn.
Yeah. But before that, in 2016 in college, all outfield and pitching. 2017, all outfield and pitching. So he had 1 point in 2018 where he played 25 games at third base, and that was it. He's an outfielder by trade otherwise. So
that's amazing for him to be thrown right into playing like second base and third base in the major league level. So here you go. That's the equivalent of getting the right fielder in Little League who sucks and put him on the pitching mound and have him pitch an inning in an important game. Like that's pretty impressive. And
it's impressive point where we're trying to rebound after an awful start to the season. You just got this momentum, and you got all this momentum, and you're just going to throw a guy randomly into a position, which could it could totally ruin all the momentum by doing that.
Well, the
Well,
other
that just shows you another layer of how Rob Thompson, as a manager, is kind of picking up from the mistakes that Joe Girardi made. Because that, to me, doing something like this, to me, shows me that he is totally plugged in to this team. Like, he interacts with these guys. Like, there's no way that somebody makes that decision if they don't know the person and aren't comfortable with them and haven't had conversations with them, is what I'm getting at. And this is stuff that you would never have seen with Joe Girardi. And that's just another layer to Rob Thompson and why he's having success early on. Because he has these guys buying in. Mm-hmm. And to be able to, have that conversation with Matt Vierling and then kind of let it come to fruition, that just shows that he's not just all talk. Like, he's actually following through with stuff. The fact of the matter is that he let him play a game at third base. No, I wasn't just telling you that I'm going to give you reps there. I'm actually going to do it. And then the players believe it. A lot of times it's more so your actions than what you say. It's not what you speak, it's what you do. And that's exactly why I think Rob Thompson has been absolutely spot on so far. I mean, obviously it's still early, but it's just another example of why I believe that he's taken everything that Joe Girardi did and he's doing the opposite almost. It's crazy.
And it's working.
Yeah, and it's working. He's pulling all the right strings right now. All right, so real quick tonight, Zach Eflin's on the mound. We are going up against Trevor Rogers. Who? Trevor Rogers. He's got a 5.58 ERA on the season, Trevor Rogers. His last 5 outings, he has not gotten through the 6. He's not gotten out of the 6th inning. He's gone 5 innings, 3 2/3, 5, 4, and 5 1/3. Left-handed pitcher, gives up a bunch of runs, walks batters, et cetera, et cetera. I have a feeling you're going to see some more adjustments to the lineup tonight. You're going to see a heavy right-handed lineup. You might see Stock get a day off. You'll probably – I don't know who's going to play center field, whether it's – maybe you see Verling in center field tonight. He has played center field. Right-handed bat instead of the lefty Odubel or lefty Moniak. I think it's a night where you're going to see some more adjustments to the lineup. Can Zach Eflin follow in Aaron Nola's footsteps, Mark, and maybe come out here and continue this winning way here?
I think the Marlins are a good opponent for him. Not the best team in the world, but not the worst. So he does have to pitch up to, a halfway decent standard. I know we've all been down on him, and I think that's kind of like our expectations are really, really high for him. But at this point, you are what you are. So if he can give us like 5 innings of decent pitching, let the lineup do the rest if they're up against a guy who has almost a 6 ERA. I mean, we should crack that guy tonight, don't you think? And that's where you need the run support. Get the run support for Eflin to build his confidence up. So if he does give up 2 or 3 runs, well, we scored 6, it really doesn't matter, and he can build his confidence up for the next outing. I think that's where you need to kind of pick up, the batters need to pick up the pitchers and so forth. So, tonight is a nice night if they can get up to an early lead, like at 3, 4, 5 runs early, where Eflin can kind of relax and feel like if he does make a mistake or two, he's got that buffer with the lead. So they need to get out to an early lead to help build his confidence. I think that should be what the goal is tonight.
The Phillies' track record has always been lately, those bad pitchers, that walk guys or give up a lot of runs. They just start swinging at first pitches and they get these guys into grooves. And, I don't care how bad of a professional pitcher you are. If you're in the major leagues, at some point you're capable of having a really great start. And so you got to be kind of, to an extent, be patient with this guy and let him make some mistakes. And give Zach Eflin that thing. Don't let this guy, who obviously can't get through 5 innings regularly, get through 7 innings tonight because he's having 10 pitch innings and stuff like that. I think we talked about that, Jason, earlier this year with multiple other starting pitchers that we faced. Those 9 and 10 pitch innings are just killer for the Phillies and great for the starting pitcher.
Yeah, I mean, but you mentioned that Trevor Rogers is having a bad year, but he's not a bad pitcher. He actually was like third in the National League Rookie of the Year voting last year. He's a young guy that's having basically struggling in his sophomore year. But he let you can't just look at what he's doing now and say that that's his track record, because he obviously had a good season last year. So he's capable of being a good pitcher. So you're right. You don't want to have that mentality like, oh, we got this. This guy's got a 5 ERA. We're going to blow him out, because that's exactly the times where you're going to have exactly what you just said, where you shit the bed because you're over trying and you're overthinking. You got to let these guys go up there, and they have been in this run. They've been much better with their plate discipline. They've been seeing pitches. They've been not swinging at the first pitch, and that's important. And I also believe that begins and ends with the manager. And I think that's another thing that we haven't really even talked about. Like they're seeing the ball better at the plate. They're letting the pitches come to them. They're not trying too much. So, I think to me, that's the sign of a team that is, I don't want to say comfortable. That's the team that's the sign of a team that's confident in their ability, and they're not pressing as they were under Girardi. I think Trevor Rogers is definitely, beatable, but you also don't want to go down that rabbit hole of, just thinking that you got this win. So,
okay. All right. So real quick,
against the Marlins, we always shit the bed against the Marlins.
Exactly.
Jamie Moyer to come out of retirement always against the Marlins, because that was the only team that Jamie Moyer could pitch well against. Honestly, he was always lights out against the Marlins. All right. So real quick, last night he was at the game. He's been around Philly for the last 4 or 5 days. I don't even know why, but Philly has a new adopted son. One Chad Ocho Cinco John. Is he Ocho Cinco or is he Chad Johnson now?
He's Chad Johnson now.
He's back to Chad Johnson. I mean, he's like Ron Artest, changing his name every other day. I never know what to call him. I never know what to call Ron Artest, whether it's Meta World Peace or whatever. Why is Chad Johnson all of a sudden now, the biggest Philly sports fan in the world? And are we okay with him jumping on the Philly sports bandwagon, Mark?
So I got a breaking news here from Airport John Clark. He said he's in town training with a Philly fighter named Jaron Ennis. So I don't know. Is he fighting now? Is he boxing?
I have no idea.
So he's in town for a few months, but he's been making the rounds. He's been at Green Eggs Cafe. He's been out and about. He's been in North Philly. He was at the game as a guest of Bryce Harper. Like, is he one of us now? I'll adopt him. He's got a lot of personality, man.
Jason, thoughts on that?
I mean, I just think it's funny. Like, I look at how it seems like Philly attracts super fans. Like Mike Trout does it with the Eagles, and now you have a football player doing it with the Phillies. Like, I mean, I'm okay with it. I'm not gonna complain. I mean, I think it's pretty cool. I think the guy's kind of a little bit weird. Not weird, but strange. Yeah, sometimes I see some of his stuff, but hey, we'll take him on the bandwagon.
Yeah. Hey, a little bit more star power in the city. It's always helpful, right?
Phil, did he throw the first pitch out last night?
We did not make it to our seats by first pitch.
You know what would be a cool? I was just thinking, we're talking about Chad Johnson. I think it would be cool if him and T.O. did a podcast together.
Throw Freddie Mitchell in that podcast as well. Fred X, T.O., and Ocho. I like it. Let's get Ocho on here first. How about that? Ocho, you're more than welcome on Trending. You come on the best podcast there is in Philly. But Ocho, T.O., or hell, let's have maybe he's training to be in one of those celebrity boxing matches, so we could have an Ocho versus T.O. celebrity boxing match. Who would win in a celebrity boxing match? Chad Johnson or Terrell?
T.O. would wipe the floor with him, dude.
T.O. is.
I am going to mark this down the 29-minute mark here and let Ocho Cinco know that you guys think that Terrell Owens would wipe the floor with him. I am sure that Chad Johnson will have something very interesting to say about your guys' opinion on that.
Have you seen T.O.? Like, that dude looks like
I
he
want to
can play
get this.
football
Now
tomorrow.
we have to have this happen.
I'm going to call him out. I'm going to let him know that you guys aren't a fan of him boxing T.O. So
I'm curious as to why he would want to
Not
box in the first place, though.
I would be curious why a lot of these athletes, there's a lot of former athletes that get into boxing. Some of them take it real seriously and go mixed martial arts like Herschel Walker did. But like Frank Gore was in a celebrity boxing match.
Frank Gore was just in a
recently. He actually won his match. And Frank Gore wasn't in a celebrity boxing match. He was in a legit sanctioned boxing match and stuff like that. And he looked okay. I just don't understand why they get into it after football. It's got to be the competitive edge and not wanting to give up on that. But I don't know. I think there's better things to do with your time once you're a retired athlete than take punches to the face.
Absolutely.
That I would agree. I wouldn't take punches to the face, period. I mean, but again, I think to your point,
that Italian nose of yours can't look any better.
I could take a punch or two, but it's been a while. No, I mean, to your point, like these athletes, that competitive edge doesn't go away once they leave the sport. And football is a very violent physical sport. So, hey, what's the next thing that I can do that matches the violence that I've been accustomed to my entire life? And I've said this before, like playing the game of football, I think it's very, very hard to turn that switch off when you're on the field and you're playing that violent game and then you're off the field. Can you turn that switch off and be a normal human being? A lot of players can, but there's some that can't differentiate, and those are the ones they're typically in trouble after their playing days, or when they have too much free time in their hands.
Take up golf or gardening or something. Don't get into a boxing ring. Do you really need? You've already taken how many hits in your career? Do you really need to take punches to the face? It just, to me, it just doesn't seem like the best choice of your retirement. There's plenty of other go play poker. You know what I mean? There's plenty of non-contact, competitive edge things you could do, and boxing would be the least on my, list after it all. So yeah, but talking T.O., talking all these other guys, it's a great segue into the topic that I want to run the rest of this show on, and also, for as much as I think this might even bleed into tomorrow's show a little bit. So I ran a poll on Twitter last week about ESPN 30 for 30s. I love ESPN's 30 for 30s. Me and Parcero were talking about him last night at the game about how every single one of them might not be a topic you're interested in, but the production value and the effort and time they put into producing these is top notch. And I can name a dozen of them that I've absolutely just loved. But the question is, and the poll question was, and I'll put it up on the screen for everybody, what Philly sports topic over the last 20 years would you most like to see an ESPN 30 for 30 done on? Now, I put a couple on there. I put the T.O. McNabb feud, everything to do with Ben Simmons, Sam Hinkie in the process, or other. 171 votes. Obviously, T.O. and McNabb won this. But surprisingly, there was a lot of negative comments that people don't really care to know any more about the T.O. McNabb situation. And a documentary on it would not fascinate them at all. And I think that's crazy. That would obviously be my number one choice. I would love to hear Drew Rosenhaus be as open and honest as possible about everything that went on there. And T.O. and hell, maybe you can get Donovan, egg him in the right direction. He might even open up about the whole situation. Andy Reid wouldn't, but maybe you get Joe Banner to talk about it. I would absolutely be fascinated to know the inner workings on the falling apart relationship between T.O. and Donovan. Because if you remember, when he first came to town, they were buddy, laughing, joking. They were doing press interviews together. They were like the next tag team champions. They were tight as can be. So I'll start with you, Mark. Is T.O. Donovan the one that would be most interested in? Or do you understand why people might be a little tired of that whole thing?
I would love to see it. I want answers because that 04 team should have won the Super Bowl. McNabb had a terrible game that game. He threw 3 interceptions. And they say he wasn't conditioned and that's why he was thrown up and shit like that. I do believe for somebody that was from Chicago, you would think coming into Philadelphia, he'd have a pretty thick skin and pretty kind of dialed into what a big city is like. And honestly, McNabb wasn't built for this city. He was a very, very thin-skinned athlete. And if you listen to sports radio in this town, anytime McNabb comes up as a topic, you get like bits and pieces from, a lot of the ex-players who were on either as guests or hosts on. McNabb wasn't the best of teammates, and McNabb wasn't, he didn't have that thick skin, and McNabb wasn't quite the leader one would expect. There's a story to be had there. I think T.O. has gotten on a soapbox and has not been afraid to say things about it, whereas others kind of just want to tiptoe around it, maybe just to maintain relationships with McNabb or whatnot. I think there's a huge story. Listen, T.O. has got a personality bigger than, any player that was on that team. And I think McNabb really took offense that he wasn't the focal point of the team anymore. It was T.O. and his ego got in the way. I really do. And that's why that's why T.O. only played 20 games for us. I would have loved to seen him stay for a little bit and see what would happen.
Yeah, I mean, I really deep down inside feel that if they worked it out, maybe 05 they win the Super Bowl, or at least they win one Super Bowl at some point with the two of them at the helm.
I would agree, because we were begging for a top caliber wide receiver to complement McNabb instead of your Pinkstons and Thrashes and Chad Johnsons and Torrance Smalls and those guys, and that was the ignorance and arrogance of Andy Reid, thinking his system didn't require people that had talent because his system trumped the player talent, and which was absolutely not true. And he's kind of went the opposite way in Kansas City now. And that's why I don't like Andy Reid. I'm getting off on a tangent now, but that story would be a great 30 for 30. I would love it.
I would love to know whoever produced it, who they would ask and who they would actually be able to convince to be honest, like what former players, because Brian Dawkins, someone like him, or they're not going to go out there and say anything negative.
I'll throw two out.
Freddie Mitchell.
Freddie Mitchell's one. Hugh Douglas is another. Remember, Hugh Douglas got in a fist fight with T.O. in 05. Grease, I think, would give you a straight story. There's some players out there. There's some players that probably want to get some things off their chest, too, about their time there.
Obviously, I think Drew Rosenhaus would be like the center of attention in the entire show, because it would be almost like an advertisement for him and his agency by just being on the ESPN 30 and just saying it all and how he represented his player and got him out of town and big payday with the Cowboys and whatnot. So
the two most important ones are T.O. and McNabb, and put them in the same room and let them go tell their each side of the story. That would be fantastic viewing.
That would be. Jason, would this be something that you would be must-watch TV, or you, like some of the other people in the comments, that would be like, I don't really care anymore?
No, I think I told you off the air. I thought I don't even think it's close. I think this is the story. I think what's fascinating about it is that there's always two sides to a story. And this one is one of those stories where both sides are emphatically polar opposite on what on the noise that's come from each camp. So I think I want to know the truth. And I think we all realistically know the truth. The more that I go every year, and it's painful for me, because I was always a Donovan McNabb apologist. I was a Donovan McNabb. I basically worshiped this guy. He was like my altar. Honestly, growing up, to me, at that time, there was nothing more that I was interested in than Donovan McNabb. And listen, that was through the good and the bad. I was that way. But now that his career has come to an end and you just hear more and more stories about this guy, I'm starting to understand that maybe, just maybe, my opinion of him is not realistic. And that where I had him on this pedestal, he's not necessarily there and doesn't necessarily belong on that pedestal, because I think McNabb, the person, is not a good guy. I don't think he's as good of a person as he comes across. Like sometimes on these shows, I know he does them, and as a lot of people say, "Oh, McNabb's a nice guy," and McNabb's a nice guy, but you hear all these other things come out every year. There's something else. I mean, you just saw the Deshaun Jackson thing 2 weeks ago, where he was interviewed and basically said that McNabb said that he didn't deserve to make the Pro Bowl that year. Like, who does that? Like, that's your teammate. Like, that just shows McNabb has he's self-conscious about himself. And you're right, Mark. He was mad that he wasn't the center of attention when T.O. came here. And I think that's the whole thing that happened. And knowing what I know now and seeing these stories come out, I realistically believe the truth lies obviously somewhere in the middle, but I'm almost drawn to T.O.'s side of things at this point, knowing what I know about McNabb. I would have never said this 20 years ago. I mean, I would have, T.O. was the cancer. Get rid of him. You know what I mean? And now it's I don't know, man. I think T.O., realistically, when you see a guy that comes back on basically a broken leg and plays in this Super Bowl and almost wills the team to win. If it weren't for T.O., we would have been probably, blown out in that game. T.O., I mean, he was just a monster. He had 100-some yards. I know he didn't score a touchdown, but, to see that and have that type of a player come back and then basically have what happened, the following year, I don't know, man. I think McNabb was the issue. I think McNabb ends up being, if they did have this story, this 30 for 30, I think it comes out that, McNabb was kind of the ultimate reason why we never got to that Super Bowl win that we could have had with that team.
Hey, I mean, I think it would be must-see TV. I really do. And it could, I mean, at least in the Philadelphia market, it would probably be one of the highest, if not highest rated ESPN 30 for 30s that they ever did. Because, all three of us would be sitting there watching. Hell, we would probably do a live viewing of it and be talking about it as it's going on the screen, because, the group chat at DSM would be on fire during that first airing of it. So the next one on my list here is I'm not going to the next one. I'm skipping down one here. The next one that I'm most interested in seeing is Sam Hinkie in the process. I mean, I put Ben Simmons on the list, but that's almost part of the process to an extent. I mean, I would love to hear some talk about Ben Simmons and what really went down last year, but still kind of fresh. So Sam Hinkie in the process. But as I think about it, it's kind of Sam Hinkie in the process and the NBA trying to stop the process with the whole Brian Colangelo thing. So I'd be really interested in seeing Sam Hinkie come back, because to my knowledge, since Sam Hinkie's been booted from Philly, I don't think I've ever seen him do a single press conference talk. I don't even think he's gotten a job in the NBA since then. There's books been written about it. I don't know. I would like to hear people like Sam Hinkie, some of the guys that's worked with him, and then also some people on the other side, on the NBA side, talk about why they were so forceful on trying to make the Sixers get rid of him. And to kind of hear, I would love to hear from Sam Hinkie and be like, what was the plan? If you were not fired, what would have been the next steps in the process? So I am super interested in learning more about the Sam Hinkie process and stuff about that. Mark, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, I mean, I pulled up Sam Hinkie on Wikipedia. I'm just trying to go through what his deal is. He's an odd bird. And didn't he write this large manifesto, but when he got fired or relieved of his duties from the Sixers, that didn't make any sense at all? I mean, he's probably a very brilliant mind with numbers. The problem I had with the process is I didn't see an end game in it. Like when were they going to start winning? When were they going to have the pieces in place to continue to like strive to win some basketball games? I didn't see it during his tenure, and honestly, some of the picks that he picked did not pan out. I mean, they did not pan out. I mean, Embiid was obviously the crown jewel of the process, but who were some of the other picks in the process? Nerlens Noel was a hot mess. Okafor was a hot mess, and he didn't fit on the team at the time.
Noel still has a role in the NBA. He still plays in the NBA. He's still a backup center, occasional starter. As a defensive, minded guy, he's not an awful basketball player at all. He's a little undersized, but Nerlens Noel is not a bad basketball player. The Jahlil Okafor was the big mistake. That was the biggest mistake of the process because he didn't fit here. And his game, you could tell right away, was not going to translate to the NBA. So the Jahlil Okafor thing was the big misstep. And I would have to go back and look at the Okafor draft real quick. That was definitely where he made his misstep, though.
Yeah, I mean, the end game. I didn't see the end game. I just seen a constant tanking of seasons for picks and trading picks, and it didn't seem to me they were actually building a team to win games. And eventually, you had to have a plan on that. I didn't ever feel that there was a plan. Thank God it brought us Joel Embiid, but drafting that guy was a risk in itself because he missed that first season, and then he broke his foot again, and he missed the second season. And you were like, this was a failure too. But once he started playing, obviously, I think he's the best basketball player in the league right now. I really do. But I never saw that there was an end game, and that's what troubled me the most.
Going back and looking at the Okafor draft, I forgot. It's really bad. So, I mean, really, I bet you if they didn't have the 3 pick, if they would have won the lottery and gotten the second spot, maybe Hinkie's plan would have been different. But the top of the draft board was the Karl Anthony Towns number 1, and then D'Angelo Russell number 2, and then Okafor went 3. I would be really hard to imagine Hinkie would have taken Okafor in the Sixers situation if he had the opportunity to take Russell or Towns. Because after Okafor, Porzingis went 4. Maybe they could have taken him, but he hasn't really amounted to much. But then after Porzingis, pick 5, Mario Hezonja isn't in the league, I don't think, anymore. I don't know. Willie Cauley-Stein, we saw him this year for a cup of coffee on a 10-day contract. Emmanuel Mudiay, Stanley Johnson, Frank the Tank Kaminsky, Justice Winslow. I really thought Justice Winslow was going to be a really good player. Miles Turner, Trey Lyles, Devin Booker at 13. That's the misstep right there. But obviously 12 other people passed on Devin Booker. That draft in 2015, it's I go through some of these names: Terry Rozier, Kelly Oubre, Rashad Vaughn, Jerrion Grant, Sam Decker. I actually liked Sam Decker at Wisconsin. He had a great NCAA tournament that year. C.D. Osman, Montrezl Harrell. They went second round. I mean, it was a pretty bare bones draft in 2015. So it was the mistake drafting Okafor, but who else was he really going to take at that point? That's the problem there. But I still, Jason, thoughts on learning about what Sam Hinkie. I almost want to see it, Jason. I don't know if you saw the Ric Flair 30 for 30 guys, where it's basically just Ric Flair sitting in a ring telling stories. I would like a Sam Hinkie 30 for 30 where he's just sitting in an office, just telling stories and talking about his thought process behind each and every one of these decisions.
Yeah, I mean, part of the thing for me is that I enjoy about 30 for 30s is that they're very informative and you get a lot of information. And me being, obviously, I'm not as much of a basketball guy as some of the other guys on DSM. Like I'm not plugged in as much. And it would actually be even more probably exciting for me to see that because it would show I would learn things like that I don't even know, like even things that happened in the process because I really wasn't even following the Sixers at that point. Like I was so frustrated, like in Philly sports in general, besides obviously the Eagles. But even then, at that point, at 2015, the Eagles were not that good. That was the Chip Kelly mistake coming out of there. So
do we want to see Chip Kelly 30 for 30?
I was just thinking, I think that would be a good one because remember when he came in and he got rid of Deshaun Jackson and he got rid of LaShawn McCoy, and you talked about it how often about what would have happened had we made that the big what ifs in sports. What if we would have traded for Marcus Mariota? Like, would we have ever won a Super Bowl? And it's just like there's so much to talk about. But yeah, I think I definitely would be interested in the process thing. I think it would be very informative and just to learn like what was Sam Hinkie thinking, what was going on in that brain of his, like at that point.
30 for 30 hashtag do the deal. It's already pre-written up because that was the Marcus Mariota thing. That was like at the beginning of hashtags in Twitter. Everybody was hashtagging do the deal. And
thank God they didn't.
I know. Could you imagine? I mean, we never win that Super Bowl in 2017 if they do the deal. We don't. I will say that right now.
Well, we don't know that because
I know it.
Mariota could have got hurt too, and I mean Foles was the big piece of that.
But I think if they draft Marcus Mariota, Chip Kelly stays a little bit longer. Who knows what else he does to the team? I don't know.
I got what you're saying.
I give Marcus Mariota respect because he's found a way to hang on in the league with bare minimum quarterback talent. I mean, isn't he like the de facto starter right now in Atlanta? I mean, I don't think they have anybody ranked ahead of him on their depth chart. I mean,
they just drafted Ritter, but he's not ready.
Yeah,
Ritter's
exactly.
the quarterback of the future.
So, that all was standing. I mean, Marcus Mariota has survived in the NFL for a while, which is great. But, man, hashtag do the deal. Who was it? Was it the Cuz that started
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Who's better, Marcus Mariota or Carson Wentz?
Oh, my God.
I'm serious.
Carson Wentz.
Wentz is. I mean, statistically, Wentz puts up numbers. Mariota lost his starting job to Ryan Tannehill. Yeah. I mean that's.
And Ryan
Tannehill is a good NFL quarterback.
Actually, a very good.
I think Ryan
Tannehill NFL quarterback.
Yeah, Ryan Tannehill is a top 15 quarterback in the NFL, top 12 quarterback in the NFL.
Look what Ryan Tannehill did with Miami. Like everyone seems to think like Ryan Tannehill is just some joke of a quarterback. Like Ryan Tannehill's a lot better than people give him credit for.
Ryan Tannehill didn't play quarterback till his junior year of college in his life. Halfway through his junior year, they converted him.
He also had a terrible injury that almost derailed his entire career. I mean, that having that type of an injury, I mean, that was a bad ACL. That wasn't just like a one that you get the surgery and you're just back.
But what wasn't Marcus Mariota the number one pick, or damn close to it?
Yeah, but does that necessarily mean anything in NFL terms? But Pat Mahomes was the third pick of that draft, and he's by far better than Trubisky. You know how it goes, Mark. It's the quarterback is a crapshoot. Like, who else was drafted number one? Oh, that's right. The guy that came to the Eagles for a cup of coffee. Sam Bradford was the first pick in the entire NFL draft. And look at Sam Bradford's career.
Dude, I would hire Sam Bradford's agent for any deal that I had to broker because that man made Sam a lot of money for minimal talent.
Dude, I ain't gonna lie. So Marcus Mariota went 2. Jameis Winston went 1. We talked about the Okafor draft. It was 2015. The Marcus Mariota draft was 2015 as well. This was a bid for top 10. Like, listen to these names that went top 10. Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, Dante Fowler, Amari Cooper, the best of the top 4 there. Brandon Scherf, tackle. Leonard Williams went, decent player. Kevin White, wide receiver from West Virginia, went to Chicago. I loved him coming out of West Virginia. He bust. Vic Beasley, Eric Flowers, Todd Gurley, Trey Waynes. I mean, this is not a very good top end of the draft.
Who did the Eagles draft that year?
Who
did the Eagles draft that year?
What was 2015? Let me go down here to the bottom.
Ertz?
No, that was the Nelson Aguilar at 20. Yeah. Interesting. All right. So, I mean, we're getting off topic a little bit here, but it's interesting to talk.
It's a good topic.
No. I mean, I want to get back to the topic because we started talking about Marcus Mariota and some other people, and I haven't even thought about this. This just kind of sprung into my head to close the show because we got other topics we could talk about in this, Philly related. But are there any national stories that you want to see 30 for 30s on? Marcus Mariota, I mean, not him per se, but, maybe one of the strikes, one of the sports strikes, something that happened in sports that kind of gets glossed over occasionally. Is there anything that's happened in national sports, football, baseball, basketball, that you'd want to see?
Did the Patriots really cheat?
I think Tom Brady just said something on
I
think Tom Brady said on something he did recently, he's like, oh, and by the way, it was a fumble. He just did it like kind of sly and stuff like that and winked. So I think that's one of them right there.
Phil, I want to get back to Philly because, of course, I never read the whole tweet. You said the last 20 years, and then I threw out a bunch that were older than 20 years for Philadelphia that I think would be fantastic 30 for 30s. The first one is the Buddy Ryan Eagles. I think you need to do an in-depth dive into the tenure of Buddy Ryan here because I think what a lot of people don't realize is just before he came, the Eagles were not very good at all. And and I am not lying, and you could do the research, they were hours away from moving to Phoenix. Mm-hmm. And Brayman came in and bought it from Toes. They brokered a deal with the city to keep the luxury box revenue. And the first big splash that Brayman really did was hire Buddy Ryan after the Bears Super Bowl. And that basically breathed life back into that franchise for a period of years. That would be and it's a shame that Buddy Ryan isn't with us anymore, and some of his players on that team also not there. But you could do like a 5-part series on that. You really could. The 1980s in Philly sports history, all 4 of our teams went to their respective championship games with the Phillies winning. A year in sports in Philly, that would be a great 30 for 30. The history of Veterans Stadium. The vet was well known throughout the United States. The fans.
I don't want one on that because that's just going to continue to paint. That's going to continue to paint Philly as bad people because they're going to talk about the jail and they're going to talk about the Santa Claus booing. So I'm going to just say no. I disagree with that one right off the bat.
Oh, I think, and the other one that I mentioned was the day Pelly Lindbergh died. You guys really need to hear the Tell Us Your Story with Dave Poulin because they cover a little on Ray Diddy and Glenn McNeil. They have a podcast and what Dave had to do and how they let the teammates know in an era before the internet and before cell phones. Really hard. It was a really hard day, and it affected how that organization handled things like that in the future. And case in point, Mike Richards and Jeff Carter were known to be hard partiers, and they traded them because of what happened to Pelly. And there's a story there too as well. And I mean, it's a pretty grim story, but some of the best 30 for 30s are that. The Len Bias one, I think, is the best 30 for 30 that's out there. I suggest you guys go see it if you haven't.
It's fantastic. Do you have any other ones, Jason, that you want to add to this list that you'd be interested in seeing?
Man, Mark just aced the production there. Like, I don't think I can top that.
That's season 20.
I took all the topics.
I love the Buddy Ryan one. I think that like the Eagles, they've had 30 for 30s on that 85 Bears team, and I think the Eagles, even though they didn't win a Super Bowl, that team in general, that defense, that Bud Carson was one of the most underrated defensive coordinators probably in the history of the NFL. Bud Carson, like, what a phenomenal.
You went from Bud Carson and to Jim Johnson. I mean,
we were blessed. And that's like, honestly, we're kind of spoiled. And that's why I think a lot of times our opinions, we have high standards because we've had guys in those roles that provided high standards, like Bud Carson, Jim Johnson, and now now we have
Jonathan Gannon.
You know what I mean? Like it's like a tough pill to swallow, but we have been kind of spoiled in Philly sports too. The fact of the matter is we have 4 sports teams. A lot of not every big city has 4 teams. I mean, you got us, you got New York, LA. I mean, there's a handful, but we're blessed. But the thing is that's frustrating is that like you have a team like the Flyers that haven't won since 76. And it's like we've been so close so often. I mean, those 80s Flyers teams, 85, 87 come to mind, when they went to the Cup. Obviously, they lost. But they played arguably the best hockey team of all time, like the Edmonton Oilers at that time. So, it's tough. But I'd actually, if you want mine, I'd like to see one on that. Like the 85 or 87
I was going to say,
Mike Keenan Flyers. That would be fantastic, Jay.
I was going to say, I would like to see a Macho Row one, see one on the 93 Phillies. But then I was thinking all the guys that I would want to hear interviewed aren't around anymore. The Darren Daltons, the Jim Fregosis, the Vukovic's of the world. But then that made me rethink about you wanting to do one, Mark, on the vet. And then if you're going to do one on the vet, you're going to have to talk about that story that is going to have to be discovered by somebody at some point about all the players that played on the vet regularly that are no longer with us. So that's another aspect of the vet story that just came from me talking and thinking about how I wanted to see, interviews with all these past players that David West, there's so many of them that aren't around anymore. So
if you want to relive that 93 though, get High Hopes. I have.
Oh yeah, I've seen it like 1,000 times. Yeah,
I mean that's actually very, very well produced, and I know it's local, but
see, I want the national angle of everything too, where you get some of the other guys in there. What was the Braves manager's name back then?
Bobby Cox.
Yeah, Bobby Cox. You get him to talk about him and Fregosi had a little rivalry going for a while there. So there'd be a lot of people you can interview.
The Tomahawk Chop.
Yeah.
That's not around anymore. Right?
The Phillies were picked to finish last in '93, behind the expansion Florida Marlins. That was their first year. They were picked to be last. They started hot in their spring training, and they got off to like an 8-1 start. And they were one day they weren't in first place. They went wire to wire except for one day. That was a hell of a team. It was a lot of fun that summer. It really was. And honest to God, like if Mitch didn't blow that game 6, they were going to win game 7. The Jays didn't want any part of the Phillies and Lenny Dykstra. Lenny Dykstra just tore it up in the playoffs.
30 on Lenny Dykstra.
I think one of my best memories of that year, and I remember it vividly. Matter of fact, I don't think maybe I wasn't at the game, but I know I specifically watched it. Was that Mariano Duncan grand slam?
Great
on Mother's Day.
Lee Smith, like
on Mother's Day,
that home run. Yeah, I mean, there were so many memories that year, but that one to me is like it was like almost like what do they call them? The Giant Slayer. Like Mariano Duncan came up there. He's like this real skinny, shortstop, who I love, by the way. He was one of my favorite platoon players of all time. And Lee Smith was just like lights out, man. That guy you couldn't hit that guy.
Of all time.
My God, I remember that grand slam.
Oh man! All right, so some great memories right there. See, I love topics like this.
Get me all tears here, man.
Yeah.
Oh my God! All right, we're gonna wrap it up for the day there. Here, trending in the AM here on DSM Media. Make sure you stay tapped into DSM Media. We got live shows all day long, including myself at Fairway to Heaven tonight, 9 p.m. live with Jason Sullivan talking the U.S. Open, which is this week in Brookline, Massachusetts. So make sure you tune into that at 9 p.m. If you turn the notifications on YouTube, you won't miss any of the shows on DSM Media. Make sure you shoot a follow to my boys here, Jason Voorhees at Mustang3651 and Mark Mazzucatelli at Mark with a C. Bunch of underscores mixed in there. Make sure you shoot me a follow, Phil Stiefel at Beard of Knowledge, and help us continue this conversation. And make sure you tune into my Twitter page in about an hour. I'm going to call out Ocho Cinco on Mark and Jason's behalf, and just let him know what they think of him fighting T.O. Just because I'm hoping, I'm praying that T.O. or Ocho Cinco sees this conversation.
Somebody will answer it.
I am going to say, yeah, if one of them answers, that'll be the dream right there. So anyway, you both might have to get your asses kicked for calling them both out, just so you know. Anyway, guys, everybody have a great day. We'll see you back here tomorrow where both boys will be back with me. And, everybody have a great day and ring the bell, baby.
Ring the bell.
Buddy.